always seems like the last minute is about 5 minutes. I'd like to call the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, May 18, 2022 to order. Commissioner Sorge, could we please have the, I am sorry, clerk, could you please give roll call?
12 present, 0 absent.
12 present, 0 absent. Commissioner Sorge, would you lead us in the prayer and the pledge?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, fellow commissioners. Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which will greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorge. I don't think we have any items that are not addressed on the agenda tonight. Is that correct, clerk? Okay. All right, on the Chief Executive's report, I'm going to be brief. There's a lot of things happening this summer, and I think there's going to be some exciting news coming up that we're going to be able to share with this commission here and the public pretty soon. But a lot of activity, and the summer is going to be full of events and different things going forward. So we're excited about that. There's a couple things on the agenda that will be there tonight. We do have a full agenda tonight, and so the first thing I want to do is I want to move an item to be read and acted upon in section 3. It would be item number 1 in that. Communication number 2022-259. We'll move that ahead of public comment tonight. So on that communication, it is J.P. Gallagher, Chief Executive, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence in the appointment of Chad Silk, 3564 Hartford Avenue, Butte, Montana, as Battalion Chief. And so do we have Chief Osborne here tonight? If you'd like to come forward.
Okay, Chief Executive, members of the council, thanks for taking the time and getting us on the agenda. We appreciate you also moving us to the top so that you guys can get out of here. But I'll give you, I usually try to do this, but I'll do it again. I like to give a brief rundown of what these promotions are, what they consist of, just so you guys have some knowledge as well as everybody behind me. This promotion is to take ex-Battalion Chief Jim Merrifield's job. Jim retired from the fire department in December to pursue a job with the EOC. So now months later, we're finally filling the position. It took us a little while to fill the position because we felt we needed to revamp the process a tiny bit. We had a company rebuild us a written test that was more pertaining to Butte-Silver instead of New York City, for example, like our old test. So the process consists of an evaluation from the chief, a written test, and multiple interviews. An interview with the fire commission, and then a scenario interview where we have Chief Meagard from Big Sky come and he grades the applicants on a pretty in-depth scenario. The amount of time and work and energy that these guys put into these processes are grueling, they're tough, but they're also very fair. And every time we've put on a promotion like this one, it always seems that the top candidate rises to the top. And in this circumstance, Chad came out on top. So I apologize in advance for a little bit more of a lengthy introduction to Chad, but I know in the past when I've given these speeches, I've tried to wing it, and then I leave regretting that I didn't say something about the candidate. So I better take advantage of when I can give these guys praise because they deserve it. So I wrote down some notes, so forgive me. So the way I look at Chad is this. If a young person ever walked up to me and said, Zach, I want to be a fireman, who do I look at and who should I try to be like? Right away, my answer would be like, you should emulate Chad Silk. And the reason for that being is that Chad is more than just an excellent fireman. And at the fire department, these guys are more than just firemen. They have to be highly trained hazmat technicians. They have to be EMTs, paramedics, high-risk technical rescue technicians, and a few more things. And that's exactly what Chad is. He is one of our most knowledgeable, technical fire operations person we have at the fire department. He is a person that most people go to if we have questions. He's one of our lead hazmat and technicians. He is a highly trained technical rescue. He is an outstanding EMT. There's not a specialized team, group, committee that Chad does not have his hand in at the fire department. He's involved in absolutely everything. There is no halfway. There is no almost for Chad. Everything he does, he gives it 100%. And if he does not meet his goal right then and there, you can bet that he will very soon. If I need something done, if somebody else needs something done, it's just known that you go ask Chad, because if you want it done, he's the guy to get it done. Let's see, for the sake of time and not boosting Chad's ego too much more, that's what I would tell that kid, that he should be like Chad. Chad has been on the department for 14 years. He spent more than half of his career as an officer. He was promoted as a captain at only 6 years on the job. That's pretty exceptional. He showed his leadership that young in his career. And he did more than just excel at his captain position. He was outstanding. And now he is our next battalion chief, and myself and the rest of the department couldn't be more pleased and happy that A shift will be in good hands with their next leader. So thank you for my time, and appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief Osborne. So with that, we'll take some action here. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve Communication 2022-259 with great pleasure to do so, and place this on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, but motion passes. So first, we want to congratulate you, Chad.
All right.
So before I let Chad speak, I just want to speak a little bit towards this, and I think every time that we've had someone from the fire department and promotions made, that I've just talked about the exceptional quality we have within the department. And among the candidates that were there that were outstanding, Chad stood out above them. And I've sat across from him at the table a number of times in a number of different roles, whether it's coaching, whether it's in his professional career, or in different designations, and he's always been outstanding, as Chief Osborne alluded to. So with that, I'll give you the mic and let you speak, and then once again, congratulations.
All right, thank you. I'll be very brief. I know you guys
No
are busy
pressure,
tonight.
Chad.
I just want to say thank you very much. And I want to make sure I tell my wife thank you. She's been with me most of my fire service career, and all the guys behind me too as well. I love working with every single one of them, and I wouldn't be here without them. We all work as hard as we can for the community that we love to be in, and we have the best jobs in the world. And again, just thank you for this opportunity, and I'll be very brief, but thank you.
Thanks, Chad.
All right.
All right. Well, congratulations once again, and thanks for all the firemen and everyone for being here, family that supported Chad in his advancement. All right. Moving on to public comments. Tonight, as we've been doing recently in here, we'll accept public comment. We're going to keep comment to 3 minutes for anyone that would like to come. Oh, yes. Hattie. Yes.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Did we approve the minutes?
We did not. We don't have it on here, do we?
Or you have to do the prayer and pledge.
Huh? It wasn't on mine. I got to go by my order. But good job. We'll move to approve the minutes. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve the minutes that occurred on the May 4th, 2022 regular meeting.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Anything on the question? And would anyone like to change the vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. I should know that that's there, but I didn't see it. I must have printed it early. All right, so now we'll move to public comment. Again, we will keep the comments to 3 minutes on, we're doing public comment on any items, right? I did the chief executive's report, items not addressed on the agenda. Yeah. So are we good?
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now we will go to public comment on any item that is on the agenda tonight. Please come forward, state your name, the item that you're going to speak on, and then again, we're going to give you 3 minutes. When we're getting close to 30 seconds, I'll give you a signal so that you can, we can wrap up. Seeing no public comment tonight, we will move on to section 1. Bid openings, public hearings, and/or, oops, okay. Welcome. You push the button, it'll turn red right up. There you go, you got it.
Hi, Jeannie Moylan, 303 Silver Street. I was looking for the number on the part that I want to comment on.
Sure.
So I'm just happy to announce that the board did vote to sell East Park to me, and I was just happy to announce that. They had voted for that. So thank you to everybody who's contacted me or come up and spoke over the last 5 weeks. I just wanted to say that too.
Thank you, Ms. Moylan. All right, any other public comment on any item that is on the agenda tonight? Now, seeing none, we'll move on to section 1, bid openings, public hearings, and/or presentations. We do have a public hearing, communication number 2022-234, Danette Gleason, Finance and Budget Director, requesting to schedule a public hearing before the Council of Commissioners on May 18, 2022, for the purpose of amending the fiscal year 2022 budget to appropriate district court reserve funds to cover the unanticipated costs related to juvenile detention budget. Director Gleason.
Chief Executive Gallagher.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Do we have proof of publication?
Mr. Chief Executive, there is proof of publication for the public hearing and also for the bid opening, and both appear to be in order.
Thank you. Now, Director Gleason. Way out of sorts.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioners, for the record, Danette Gleason, the Finance and Budget Director. This public hearing is to take comment to amend the juvenile probation budget. The local government is responsible for secure detention of juveniles throughout the process. There is points that Chief Probation Officer Kelly Spear will discuss with you when they turn over to a ward of estate or back into custody to parents or guardians. But currently, we have a budget of $239,000. We are anticipating that we've actually overexpended in our loaning funds to the district court right now. and will need funds, an additional $286,000 to get us through the end of the year. The budget is always set based on a 5-year average look. This is just one of those extraordinary years. However, I don't believe it's going to end for us this year. I think it's going to continue, and Kelly will share a little bit of information. It's significant enough that we felt it was important that the chief probation officer gives some input, and then we can do some follow-up questions. We do receive Montana Board of Crime Control money to help offset these costs. However, the total 9 counties, including Gallatin County, Anaconda, Deer Lodge, Beaverhead, Granite, Jefferson, Madison, Park, and Powell, all share only $105,000. The allocation from the Montana Board of Crime Control is based on number of students in the grade school and high school age range. So this particular year, we're only receiving $17,872. If there's additional funding that some of the other 9 counties do not expend, then they do reallocate those funds, but we don't anticipate receiving much more than $10,000 or $15,000 by the end of the year to additional funding for that. So now I'm just going to turn it over to Kelly. Again, she's the Chief Probation Officer. She can give you a little bit of what's happening in our community as well as across the state. This is not just a local issue that we're seeing, it's across the state.
Thank you, Director Gleason. Kelly, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Spear, and I'm the Chief Juvenile Probation Officer in Silverboat County. I wanted to talk a little bit about why we're seeing an increase in detention costs in the past year. First, I'd like to note that in youth court, our goal is to keep juveniles out of a formal process. So we want to address juvenile issues informally with a probation officer so that a juvenile will not see a judge, will not have to get counsel and go through that process. So that's 90% of what we deal with. Informal proceedings in youth court are things such as runaway, truancy, theft, disorderly conduct, and other misdemeanors. The other 10% of the cases in youth court are more serious offenses such as assault, burglary, and other felonies that could pose a public safety risk. So within these 10% of cases, juveniles can be placed in detention. We primarily use the Great Falls Detention or the Cascade County Regional Juvenile Detention Center. I did a 5-year average of kind of some of the trends that we're seeing, and then I asked for some state statistics from our central office in Helena. For Silverboat County, we're seeing an increase in violent offenses. This is more misdemeanor assaults, felony assaults. We're seeing an increase in felony offenses. So we saw more misdemeanor cases in years past. We're seeing more serious offenses that rise to the level of a felony. We've had 2 juveniles charged as adults this year. In past years, we have not seen that. It's pretty rare. This is a juvenile who they meet a felony criteria as well as an age. We look at the age and if the juvenile can be appropriately served in the juvenile system or if they can only be served in the adult system. We're also seeing an increase in mental health issues. And with that, we have a lack of mental health resources in the community. I think we, in general, have mental health services, but for juveniles, a lot of professionals don't work with juveniles, so that's a difficulty for us. Things that we consider before placing a juvenile in detention, we try to look for every alternative that we can. So we try to consider, can the juvenile return home safely? Are there other family members that they can live with? We have to look at victims. If the crime poses a risk to the community, we consider that as well. We try to look for alternatives. Can the juvenile come out of detention and be monitored on GPS or more check-ins with a probation officer, different safeguards in place? So we consider those alternatives as well. We also look at if a juvenile can go to a step-down facility like shelter care, which would be Discovery House in this area. It's kind of like a group home. They go to school in Anaconda. They have counseling. They're staffed 24/7. We also try to look at if the juvenile can get a CD or mental health evaluation within the community rather than keeping them in detention waiting for that kind of service. When these alternatives are not possible, a juvenile might stay in detention until we can get the resources that they need or is required by the court. We're currently working on different programs to help reduce the number of more serious offenses. We think it's early intervention. Less than a year ago, we started an MIP court, so minor in possession court. That covers alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana. We did a truancy program in the past. We're going to try to do that again for the 22-23 school year. And we're looking into a mentoring program. So I think if we can intervene earlier in a kid's life, we think that they will be more successful and not rise to the level of offenses that we're seeing now. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Any questions of commissioners? Seeing none, okay, I'll open the public hearing. First, I will call for proponents. First call for proponents. Second call for proponents. I've seen a thumbs up out there, so we'll take that as a proponent. Third call for proponents. Final call for proponents. We will change to opponents. First call for opponents. Second call for opponents. Third and final call for opponents. We'll close the public hearing. Moving on to presentations. We have number one, communication number 2022-212, Aubrey Japp, our Archives Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization for time. Oh, I'm skipping everything. Gosh. Man, I don't know where I'm at today.
Perfect. I can't
I think
believe
it's
it.
because I haven't been home before 9 o'clock at night the last 4 days. So, sorry, bid openings. So Zach Osborne, communication number 2022-210, Zach Osborne, Fire Chief, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a bid opening for May 18th for the new fire apparatus for the fire department. So, Director of Fire Services, Osborne. And we've already had proof of publication.
From here? Oh. Oh, okay. Where am I at? Here? Oh, I'm on. I am on. All right. Okay, so this first one is General Fire Apparatus Incorporated, 3924 East Trent Avenue, Spokane, Washington, 99202.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce.
This first one has a total of $520,382.
520,382, is that correct?
Do I note that? Also a note that if the chassis amount of $129,616 is paid upon arrival at our plant in South Dakota, deduct $4,966.
Okay. Could you read that one more time?
$4,966
Deducted from the price. Thank you.
deducted from the total.
Okay. Thank you. Is that our only bid tonight? Okay, we have another. Okay.
The second one is Hughes Fire Equipment, Springfield, Oregon, 5159 West Roosevelt, Phoenix, Arizona, 85043. This one has a no bid, as they say, at this time, we will unable to meet the requirements.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions of commissioners? Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Chief, do you have a estimate for the cost of this?
Commissioner Anderson, Director Osborne?
You know, when we had talked about this before, the plan was to use the $183,000 that was approved last year for the 2 rescues as a down payment. So that obviously covers more than the $126,000 that they're saying to save $5,000. Shane, am I missing anything? No.
Yeah, on vehicles generally, there isn't an estimate on these. Commissioner Anderson?
No, I remember your presentation on this a while ago, and I think it's a wonderful idea and everything. I was just wondering, kind of like they suggested paying that if we had the budgetary authority to do that, and if just getting it done sooner rather than later, just with the price of everything going up so high. I just think it's a good idea to get it ordered and everything, but I just wanted to make sure the budgetary authority was there and everything.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Director Osborne?
Yeah, Commissioner, also just to note that when we started this process, I know we still had to go through all the bid wars and the openings and everything, but being halfway confident that nobody else could meet that bid without requiring a down payment, they kind of took our word, and we did get stuck at a last year's price than this year's. Yes, prices went up quite a bit. Yeah.
Thank you, Director Osborne. Any other questions of commissioners? Seeing none, we'll refer this back to the Fire Commission. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move that we relay this singular bid back to the Fire Department, Chief Osborne.
Second.
And
Oh, sorry.
we'll wait their response to this body.
Second. We have a motion and a second to refer back to the fire department. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Now I'll let Audrey come up, but, okay, presentations, communication number 2022-212, Aubrey Japp, Archives Director, requesting Council Commissioners authorization for time on the May 18, 2022 regular Council Commissioners meeting agenda to conduct a presentation on the Archives 2021 annual report.
Chief Executive.
Director Japp.
Chief Executive Gallagher, members of council, thank you. I'm pleased to present our 2021 annual report. I'm not going to go over everything in this document for the sake of all of your evening. I'm just going to go over some highlights, and then I'll allow you to go on it on your own, and please shoot any questions to me. Okay, so the mission of the archives is to be the official repository of Butte-Silver non-current government record. We also acquire and maintain numerous historical documents that are donated to us from the general public. We provide access to the collections of Butte's history to the public, and we work with children to enhance their classroom experience. We provide services to the preservation community, and we also oversee and manage the Clark Chateau. So in 2021, we had more than 2,000 researchers in our facility, and we answered 311 research responses remotely. We had over 10,000 people visit our website. We had an amazing 3,768 volunteer hours logged. We just have an awesome team of volunteers. We had 14 broad bag lunches and 166 auditorium events, serving over 2,500 patrons. In regard to acquisitions of collections, we brought in 179 collections from the public. 27 publications were added to our bibliography, so these are things that were written out of our archives collections. We recorded 25 oral histories, scanned more than 16,000 pages of government record. We have an awesome volunteer who does all of that. We digitized 87 film reels, mostly Butte High School sports films. It's a pretty great project going on. And we brought in 9 collections of government record from various Butte-Silver departments. So some of our events we hosted this past year, one was W.A. Clark and Art of the Gilded Age. We worked with the Montana Museum of Art and Culture in Missoula to bring 7 masterpieces from Senator William Andrews Clark to Butte. They were on display throughout the summer. That was a great opportunity. There's not many times in Montana we get to see artworks of this scale. So that was pretty amazing. And then in conjunction with the gallery, we had some public programming, which included some book signings. One was with author Liz Brown, who talked about her new book, Twilight Man, about Clark Jr. We had Keith Edgerton, a professor at MSU Billings, talk about W.A. Clark. Bill Dedman, who wrote the book Empty Mansions, came and did a book signing and a presentation at the Clark Chateau and Copper King Mansion. And then Mary McCormick gave a series of tours to the public, walking tours, talking about Clark's different properties. We have a great brown bag lunch series that happens twice a month. When the pandemic was still more of an issue with in-person events, we did them on KBOW's Party Line. That was really great. And then in the summer, we were able to resume in-person programming, which we're continuing. A couple examples, we had Jim McCarthy talk about legal hangings in Butte, and Tony Roth from the Bureau of Mines talked about the Stope books that are at the archives. In the fall, archive staff, myself and Lindsay Mulcahy gave a tour of Mount Moriah Cemetery. It was really great. We had a really good audience come, so it's something we're going to continue in this year. So we're going to do another Mount Moriah Cemetery tour, and then we're going to do a tour of the Jewish cemetery as well. The Montana History Conference was located at the archive, or not the archives, in Butte this past year. The archives helped a lot with that. It was a wonderful event, bringing people from all over the state to learn about Butte history. There was great tours involved that promoted our cultural institutions. Ellen Crane was the plenary speaker at the event, and then I gave a presentation along with Clark Grant about the Verdigris Project, which is a collection of oral histories. And Lindsay Mulcahy, along with other Butte Historical Memorial members, Judy Chadwick and Karen Henningsen, presented on the Great Explosion of 1895. As I mentioned, we have a great team of volunteers. We have over 50 volunteers who contribute over 3,700 hours to help us do our work, and we honestly couldn't do it without them. We had a volunteer appreciation event, and at it, we asked them to help us clean up the archives parking lot, but we also then fed them, and it's really great to the work they do and to be able to appreciate the work they do at the archives. They help us sorting collections, do genealogy research, digitize film, help out with our front desk, and any sort of project. They're just an amazing group of people we have. We received funding to do a grant on the Women's Protective Union from the Montana Community Foundation and the Harbaugh Foundation. This grant allowed us to scan a large portion of that collection and create a virtual exhibit. So that's on our website, buttearchives.org. Also on that are scanned documents from the collection and a timeline of the Women's Protective Union's influence in Butte. Part of some 2020 events were some all nations workshops we did. We did them with 4 communities, but the Jewish community, out of that conversation, we learned that the Jewish community here is dwindling. Their temple, they were worried about future use and who would kind of take that building on into the future. So we said we'd help them look at some options. So the URA funded a grant to do a feasibility study of the temple to look at turning that into, instead of a religious center, a cultural center, talking about all the ethnic groups of Butte. What's really exciting about that is from that feasibility study and all of that, this summer we have 2 interns from Middle Tennessee State University coming to develop interpretation. They'll have the synagogue open for some limited tours. We hope to have some musical events there, so keep looking for that. It should be a really great event to see if we can kind of maybe make this temple have some good future use that the entire public can benefit from. So some collections we got this year. One was the Clement Leva collection. It's a collection of over 1,000 glass plate negatives taken by Clement Leva. He was born in Italy in the 1870s. He came to America in 1900. He settled in Walkerville, worked as a miner, but he did side work as a photographer. It was donated by his grandsons, Bob and Dan Leva, to the archives, and it is just a beautiful collection documenting just everyday life in Butte, construction of the Black Rock Mine and Mill. That should be available publicly very soon. We're almost done cataloging it. It's a really wonderful collection to look at. We received the Tom Mulcahy Collection. Tom Mulcahy passed away in 2021. He was a member of the Friends of the Archive and just a friend to all of us. He was a collector of Butte memorabilia, genealogy, sports history, and he had a remarkable life. He was inducted 3 times in the Butte Hall of Fame. He played professional baseball. He was ordained as a Catholic Jesuit priest, friends with Tommy Lasorda, and he worked for the San Diego Padres. So his collection runs the whole gamut of all sorts of his incredible life. As I mentioned, we also oversee the Clark Chateau. They just do an amazing amount of programming in that facility, some of which they do is the art walk, so they plan the map for the art walk. They held a young artist vaudeville workshop. They received a grant from the Montana Arts Council to offer for free. Students could participate in a workshop to do vaudeville acts, and then they performed 2 vaudeville productions for the community, and Frankie Angel oversaw those vaudeville workshops. They also have some local groups that use the Chateau, so the Butte Symphony rents an office. The Threshold Singers meet at the Chateau, as well as there's also tango classes that are held there. Once a week, there's an after-school program called Young Creators that is a weekly art class for kids, and it's really great. They talk about different artists and different art styles, and they do that throughout the school year. They're working with a group called Open Air. They brought in 2 artists last year, Erica Selby and Nico Larson. They do an artist in residence series here, and then in late fall, they held an exhibit. And then they have book clubs, a high school internship, they have a ukulele club, radio players, so the Chateau stays very busy. And then I just briefly want to talk about our Friends of the Archives. They're our nonprofit group. They fund our volunteer appreciation, a lot of our exhibits, rebinding newspapers, doing digitization of our things on magnetic tape. They also provide funds to host receptions for the Irish ambassadors and consulate generals to come visit the archives. So they really do a great amount, not only for the archives, but I think for just the Butte community in general. And they also, this last year, had awarded their second annual fellowship awards, which they do annually. And they gave 2 fellowships awards, one to Eileen Markey, who is doing research on Irish American women and the radical women of Ireland, and Dr. Ciara Ryan, who is looking at the Sarsfield O'Sullivan family. And then they also awarded a stipend to Quincy Baylius, who's looking at Indigenous people in Butte. So that's a quick rundown of the Friends, and I try to keep it brief. So I'd welcome any questions, or as you guys are able to look at this, I'd welcome questions at a later time as well.
Well, thank you, Aubrey. As we all know, the archives is just such a treasure and the envy of many communities around the state and nation, and you guys do such a great job. But any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I appreciate that you kept it brief, but I wish you wouldn't have, because I could listen to you talk about the archives all day. I think you guys do a wonderful service for the community, so I just want to thank you, and please pass my thanks on to all your staff and your volunteers.
Commissioner Shea, thank you.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Aubrey knows that I am a archives geek. There's a club of some kind, people that I live a block from the archives. And it's just an amazing experience to go there. Everything is, a lot of it's hands-on. You're very friendly staff, very helpful. And just hang out at the archives is amazing information. And since they added on to the building, you know, for your vault, they actually are asking for stuff to put in there because it's huge. And you can get just about anything you want to find out about Butte. So thanks for and now you're the new director. So we need to change the book next year so that it has you in there, okay?
Commissioner Shaw,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
everything. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Any other comments from commissioners? Seeing none. Oh, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Just want to shout out, thank you for all you guys' hard work, and keep it up. It's awesome. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thanks, Commissioner O'Neill. Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Aubrey, thank you very much. Your stuff is always so cool and it's always well presented. It just struck me, just thought this was a random fact, but you were talking about Father Sarsfield O'Sullivan. His house is where I actually lived during college and where my dad resides now. So if ever looking for a tour through that, we'd be happy to set you up with that.
We'll take you up on that. Great.
Sounds good. Great.
Thanks, Commissioner Thatcher. Well, once again, Director Job, thank you for everything that you've done.
Okay, Chief Executive Council, thank you so much.
Okay, moving on to communication number 2022-153, Sean Frederickson, Commissioner District 1, and Eric Mankins, Commissioner District Number 9, requesting Chief Executive Gallagher to coordinate a presentation on street maintenance fee for the April 27, 22 to discuss assessing the fee per tax parcel or per unit. And we have Director Gleason that will give us this report. Would you like to say anything with this, with your communication, Commissioner Frederickson? Okay. All right, Director Gleason.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioners, tonight I'll be doing the presentation for the Street Maintenance District. Didn't want to delay it any longer. In the future, you will be hearing from Public Works Director Mark Neary. He will be doing his annual presentation in June on the work plan and the use of these funds, as well as what he expects to use the funds for fiscal year 23 on. So any questions that I can't answer tonight, we can carry on and he can answer them at a later time or even during that presentation in June. As well, in my department, Tim Cassidy does a lot of the work for the street maintenance district, looking at the different assessments and then also applies the values to the assessments, and he's on vacation, so you're with me tonight. Just kind of a little history for you all, if I can get this to advance. There we go. Some of you have been here throughout the whole process of creating this district. Others are new to it. This countywide maintenance district was created in August of 2018. Prior to that time, we had 4 separate districts. The assessed value was based on the square footage in those districts. It did not encompass the whole county. It was just in certain areas, mainly in the uptown areas. So back in August of 2018, after a long couple years of processes, we changed Chapter 12.18 and then established this countywide assessment for road maintenance. We now currently have to adopt per the 712-4422 2C of the Montana Code annotated at least 75% of the annual work plan. That's the work plan that I was referencing that you will have Public Works Director present to you, or Public Works Director Mark Neary present in June to you. The alternative method of assessments, which we're kind of discussing tonight and doing a comparison for you, was first adopted in 2019 under Senate Bill 243 that allowed us to begin doing a per unit assessment versus the per parcel assessment. And that's kind of the evaluation that we've looked at a few times. And Commissioner Frederickson and Commissioner Mankins have asked us to revisit this and give you some updated numbers so that you can digest them, kind of relook at it and determine how you want to move forward. For fiscal year 22, the street maintenance fees currently generate a little over $1.5 million. The street maintenance fees, again, are assessed on a per parcel with a market value over $5,000 or greater. So per parcel means it doesn't have to have an improvement on it. It's just even a land value that's greater than $5,000. So the breakdown in revenue kind of looks like this for the fiscal year 22. The rate is $87.71 per parcel. That has been set in the budget process. Throughout the budget process, we adopt resolutions and hold those public hearings on the various rates and assessments that we have in the local government. That has been $87.71 for the past couple fiscal years. We assess 18,010 parcels, and that's how we get that $1.5 million. You can see that we have 756 master units, such as warehouses, storage units, or commercial properties. We have 14,026 residential properties, 24 hotels, motels, 40 mobile parks, 529 apartments, and duplexes, triplexes, or dorms, 32 business condos, and 2,603 vacant parcels of land. And the revenues on the far right that's generated from each one of those. In a comparison, we show the number of units versus the parcel and how that would change. So if we look at the master units, which is storage units, commercial property, that would still remain at 756 units. Again, based on how you as a council of commissioners decide the definition of a commercial property versus a residential property, and how you determine those definitions will definitely change how these units are allocated. For example, I'm talking about storage units here. It's a storage unit facility right now. The way this is looking here would be one unit, because in our preliminary discussions about how do we develop a definition for a commercial unit, we were saying that a business unit. So a business entity kind of tied to one business license is considered a commercial unit. So if a storage facility had 10 different units or 100 different units, they're still going to only be assessed underneath this kind of a definition. But that will be items that will have to be up for discussion as we move through a process if you choose to change to a per unit assessment. The same for like hotels or motels. I'll use the Copper King, for example. Today, they have one assessment for the facility. Under the commercial definition that we proposed to you last time, per business unit would not be per room that's rented out or stayed. It is per business unit. So you would have the spa, you would have the restaurant, and you would have the motel. So that would be charged 3 or assessed 3 business units rather than for every single one of the units. Again, it's going to be up to you on how we do that. This is just how we structured it in comparison for like when we did the analysis a couple years ago. So you'll see that we would move to 18,242 assessed units at 8771. We'd be picking up 232 units. We'd go to 1.6 million, so an increase of $20,000, a little over $20,000. noting that 8771, it takes a lot to move any money to really move. So really what you're comparing here, or what you're really looking at analyzing is what's the best and the most equitable and fair method that you as a council can apply to our community. I'm just going to show you what we gave you back in 2020 as the assessment. You can see that back then we were estimating of picking up about 59 parcels. Today, that number was 232 units. Okay, so back then we were saying we would have picked up around $5,000. Now we're saying we're going to pick up around $20,500 just from the additional construction that we've seen in our community. So today, again, we collect about $1.5 million. If we moved to the per unit based on the numbers that we received today, and we work a lot with Department of Revenue to try to gather this information, so it does change. It's constantly changing, but we would be at 1.6 million with an increase of 20,348. The commissioners have also requested to analyze what the next steps are. Like I had mentioned, Public Works Director will be, Mark Neary will be coming before you for the FY 2022 plan and outcomes, so he can show you what they've done over the past year and how they've used this money, as well as what they need for FY 2023. That presentation should take place around June 15th. If the council commissioners wish to move forward with the per unit assessment from the per parcel, we'll have to take an ordinance change. So a commissioner would have to send a communication to start the ordinance. The process is to begin an ordinance change, which includes things such as public hearing, a lot of discussion in Judiciary Committee, I'm sure, mainly on those definitions that I just mentioned about trying to define a residential versus a commercial unit and how that would apply to all the different types of commercial units that we have in our community. And then during the budget process for FY 2024, we would be looking at setting that unit rate through the budget process and having a rate resolution established, which is required in the ordinance throughout that process. So I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Director Gleason. Any questions of commissioners? Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Thank you, Director Gleason, for the great presentation. Yeah, I just want to thank you for showing us those numbers, and I don't really have any questions. I think you've laid it out pretty well what the next steps are if we decide to do that. And just want to point out, you know, when you presented the numbers 2 years ago, it was only $5,000, and 2 years later, now we're up to $20,000. So I think that number will keep on rising. So, and looking forward to the work plan that Director Neary will be presenting to us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Frederickson. Any other questions? Commissioner Reardon and Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Danette, I wasn't here when this was done and all that, and one caption that caught my eye and all that was this warehouse district and businesses that have a warehouse. And I guess my question to you is, say an outfit like UPS or one of those larger outfits, are they getting charged the same? Does it go by square footage or whatever as, say, let's go Mountain Hot Tub? Is that where we're at with that, or am I missing something here?
Commissioner Reardon, Director Gleason.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Reardon. It's so it's per parcel. So however the Department of Revenue has that attached to it, it's under the current method, it's one charge. So per parcel number. So some of those facilities have their land broke up, and so they have multiple properties, so they might pay on 3 parcels. They might have 3 separate parcels of land, so today they're paying 3 charges. If we move to a per unit assessment, that would be up to how this council determines the definition of a commercial unit. And so what does that look like?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Danette, you're going to have to refresh my memory a little bit from 2018, but we had an escalating plan. I think we started at 75%, and then are we now in the 100%, or is that next year?
Commissioner Fisher, Director Gleason.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Fisher. So when we had those discussions, we didn't adopt, in our rate resolution, we did not adopt an incremental increase in value. Every year, you just decided as a council of what that rate was going to be. So today, if you're looking at $87.71 per parcel, I believe Director Neary's plan for you last year, you're at about a 90% value of the plan. The state law requires us to be at 75%. So the 87.71 is around 90% of the plan he presented to you last year. Of course, his plans go up every year because salaries and costs and operating costs and everything are escalating and increasing too. So the percentage of the plan we get every year decreases a little bit now if we don't change the rate. If we continue to stay flat at 87.71 and we're not seeing significant increases, even if it's per unit, 20,000 doesn't move a lot. So, we'd have to have an increase to get more of the plan covered rather than using our regular road budget to cover those costs. So we always have a fallback. We have the road tax-supported budget. That's the fallback budget to make up that difference. We don't just stop doing work because the budget's expended. We continue the work. It's just eating into the capital that's available in the road budget that we're using.
Commissioner Fisher, follow up?
Thank you, Chief Executive. So if we make no changes, we remain at the 8771 for perpetuity or 5 years, or, I mean, is that what I recall doing this whole thing, but that's when McDonough was on here and we visited quite a bit, but I thought one time after 5 years, I wasn't sure if we kept it going or whether we had to revise it or what we done there.
Commissioner Fisher, Director Gleason.
Yep. Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Fisher, Commissioners, you did have a lot of discussion back at that time. We started at around $75, I believe, and then we moved to $87.71. You had discussions of going to $95 and then up to $100. Then we ran into COVID and things happened, and I think the council took a step back and thought that we needed to do what we could do with the plan that we had and the rate structures that we had in place were sufficient, and that we had to just kind of reduce the amount of capital that we were doing in our regular road budget in order to balance things out. So it's up to this council moving forward, if we do a rate increase to cover more of the plan. If we continue at 87.71, I can tell you costs are going up. We've seen them at the bid openings. You've seen what happens with us when we look at any. So we use patching for this, for example. You've seen what those bids were with the asphalt and the oil increases and stuff. So less work is going to get done if the rates stay flat. And then more funds are going to have to be allocated out of the regular road budget to cover the costs.
Thank you. Any other questions of commissioners? Thank you, Danette. Great presentation. Very informative. All right, moving on to tonight's consent agenda. Section A, community reports 1 through 4, and B, communications 1 through 28. Are there any segregations and/or friendly amendments? Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I have a segregation and a friendly amendment. I'll start with the friendly amendment in Section 5, Number 4, Resolution 2022-33. That amendment number has a typo in it, and it should say the number 2022-000002 should be 22-000003.
And that's on,
Resolution number 2022-33.
gotcha. Okay, so that's friendly amendment just to change the amendment to 22-000003.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, and then the segregation is from the communications, Section B, number 9, communication number 2022-244.
So the segregation is 2022-244. And Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would like to segregate item number 9, and that is 2022-2. Let's see here, not number 9, 25, excuse me, number 25, 2022-25. 262.
That's number 2022-262.
Correct.
Any other segregations? Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. If I could segregate communication 13, communication 22-248.
That's communication number 2022-248.
And communication number 6, 22-241.
That's communication number 2022-241. Any other segregations? Seeing none, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve Section 2 Consent Agenda A 1 through 4 and B 1 through 29, with the exception of Item 6, 2022-241, Item 9, 2022-244, Item 13, 2022-248, and 25. Item 25 is 2022-262.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent agenda. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. So we'll move to item number 6, communication number 2022-241, Matt Boyle, Montana Booking Agency, CEO, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to have a live music event referred to as the Block Party on 34 East Galena Street on July 1st and September 10th, 2022. We're asking permission to close the block on Galena Street from Main over to Wyoming Street from 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. to all traffic to accommodate setup and tear down the presentation of this event. We would also like permission to use the Copper Block parking lot and Type 3 barricades for both ends of Main and Wyoming Street. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. I fully supported this, and I saw Mr. Matt Boyle in the back, so he might have just been waiting to hear if this passed, but being as you were here, I thought you may want to say a few words on your event and everything. I support it 100%, and I'll make a motion in that in just a few moments, but if you had anything you wanted to say about it, being as you were here, I
Commissioner
wanted
Anderson.
to give you that opportunity.
Oh, sorry. And Mr. Boyle. Very good.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to say on it. I just showed up just in case it did get segregated. We held it last year. It was one of the first events post-COVID, you could say, once all the restrictions released. We had about 600 people there last year. It was a really good event. And yeah, just looking forward to hosting another one this year, as well as one in September as well.
Thanks, Matt. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much. It was great to see people out last year, and I look forward to seeing even more people out supporting it this year. I'm sure you'll have a fantastic crowd. All of the work you've done with these events in our community have been spot on and perfect. I know it's brought a lot of joy to the people in the community, so I commend you on that. So congratulations with that. That being said, I'd make a motion to concur with communication 2022-241 and place it on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay. Motion passes. Looking forward to the event.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Moving on to number 9, communication number 2022-244. Zach Osborne, Butte-Silver Chief, requesting Council of Commissioners approve my request for Chad Silk start his new role as Battalion Chief on May 21st, 2022. Chad was the top scorer in our recent Battalion Chief promotional process, where he outscored 5 other members of our department. Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. As everyone knows, we had almost the identical communication in the section to be read and acted upon. So I would make a motion to cross-reference number 9, communication number 2022-244 with communication 2022-259 and place on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to cross-reference this communication. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to number 13, communication number 2022-248. Chad Harrington, Dream Big Montana, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to have the Colt Anderson Dream Big Foundation on June 23rd and 24th, 2022. This event will take place on Park Street between Montana and Main Street. We are requesting a 24-hour closure for this section of the street. The Montana Park as well as Main Park intersections will be reduced to three-way traffic intersections, but will remain open. So, Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Again, I saw Mr. Harrington in the audience, and I just wanted to commend him on helping putting this event together. I know that Colt Anderson put on a similar thing a couple years ago. Eli, my stepson, is still talking about it. He had a blast with it. I think all the kids in the community had a blast with it. It's a wonderful program. It's wonderful how much he's given back to the community and you guys in helping with that. And I just wanted to know if you had anything. I saw you out there. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to speak on this event if you had anything to say.
Commissioner Anderson and Chad, welcome.
Bill Button.
There you go. You got it.
I don't know how the process works, but you did a nice job of explaining it to yourself, Bill, so we just appreciate your support to close it. This part, or this request, is just for one day of the event. There's a couple of different aspects that are involved with the event, not pertaining to this closure, but we're just asking to close Park Street between Main and Montana. We'll have a stage set up in front of Gamers Cafe that'll be the old Gamers building. It'll be facing west, so the back of it will be kind of at the main intersection, or Park and Main intersection. And then on the book end of that, or on the, excuse me, on the stage, we'll have Tim Montana playing and Levi Blum, which are both two Butte guys that are trying to make a go of the music career. And then on the opposite end, at the, basically in front of Terminal Foods, we'll have Keith Sayers and a couple of his guys. One being his little guy, I think he's 8 or 9 years old, that he's going to participate in this event also. You know, Keith travels around all over the country doing this type of show. It's a safe event. It's not a Daredevil type of show. It's a calculated show. It's not a Daredevil type of thing that's been done in the past. So we're just looking forward to being able to move forward with that.
Thanks, Chad. I know this event is really been looked forward to by a lot of people in the community, and bringing back all the Butte, really heroes. And so it's exciting to see that. And I got to talk to Colt and also with Keith Sayers a little bit about his desire to come back and do something special for Butte. So thank you for promoting this.
Thank you.
Look forward to it.
Thank you. The only thing I can see missing from this was, I was wishing that Colt would be coming back to town with the Super Bowl ring on his finger, but I guess it wasn't meant to be. But there's always next year. I can forego a couple Broncos victories for Colt, I suppose. But that being said, I would make a motion to concur with communication 2022-248 and place this on file.
Second.
And good luck.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to number 25, communication number 2022-262, Eileen Joyce, Butte-Silver County Attorney, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a public hearing for June 1st, 2022 regarding the franchise agreement between City and County of Butte-Silver and TDS Metrocom LLC. A public hearing is required prior to executing this franchise agreement. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I was asked to segregate this. There is actually a revised and a later version of the TDS franchise, and so County Attorney asked me to call on her to explain.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. County Attorney Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Shaw. So we've been working with a telecommunications attorney to negotiate this franchise agreement with TDS. And earlier today, that he provided me with a couple minor changes to the agreement that is on the council's agenda, specifically in section 10.2, which just is called the payment of fee. There was just a typo where it had the word grantor when it was supposed to be grantee. And then in another section, 12.1, he wanted to change the period of time that they could inspect the records to be consistent with the period of time that we can go back for recovery of a franchise fee. And it was 3 years, and he wants to change that to 4 years, consistent with the limitation on liability. And on recovery. And then the final change was just to clarify in section 1420 the name of our district court being the Second Judicial District Court. So I wanted the opportunity to let the commissioners know and the public know that those changes will be reflected in the franchise agreement that is posted as part of the public hearing, so that the public is commenting on the correct agreement.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. Is there any questions? Seeing none. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I have moved to approve communication number 2022-262 as amended.
Second.
And placed on file.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file as amended. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Commissioner Shaw and Commissioner Reardon. You guys vote, sir. And would anyone like to change the vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. We are moving on to section 3, communications to be read and acted upon. I'm going to ask for a quick recess on this because we have a clarification that I need to speak with County Attorney Joyce on the second communication that we have on here. So we're going to take about a 5-minute recess. So if everyone would like to take just a little break. All right, thank you. I'd like to call the Council of Commissioners meeting back to order. Oh, yeah. So we're moving back to Section 3, Communications to be read and acted upon. Number 2, Communication Number 2022-261, Jim Fisher, Commissioner, District 6, requesting Council Commissioners authorization to provide notice of my intention to make a motion to reconsider Council Communication Number 2022-201. This communication, which requests amendments to how the $80 million of opiate funds received by the state of Montana from the settling defense would be distributed in the state, was received by the, was concurred and placed on file on May 4th, 2022 at the regular meeting. Upon further review and after receiving several county attorneys across the state urging us to reject the proposed changes to an existing MOU, I will be requesting the council reconsider its action approving Council Communication 2022-201. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. This is a little more complex, but on May 4th, Communication 2022-201 was approved by the full council to allow the Chief Executive to sign the agreement with the opioid settlement with the state of Montana. Thereafter, we received a letter signed by about 7 of the county attorneys in the state of Montana asking us to allow our county attorney to join forces and not approve that. In the midst of that time, Chief Executive Gallagher prudently signed the agreement. So at this time, rather than reconsider an action, I have to rescind, ask for a motion to rescind the vote that we took. And in order, when I rescind, we've got to get 2/3 of the people on this council to approve. Upon that, if that happens, if we get the 2/3, then I would like to hold this in abeyance and allow the county attorney to contact the Attorney General's office of the state of Montana and visit with them and see if we are allowed to move forward with this. I would like to call on the county attorney or the chief executive if they'd like to add anything, or if I maybe misspoke on anything. Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher, no, I think you stated it pretty accurately. We have to take a vote to rescind the action that was taken based on that this commission gave authorization for me to sign that, and then realization that the other counties were wanting to reconsider based on what they thought the settlement would be. So I'll refer back to County Attorney Joyce here on any other information.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive and Commissioner Fisher. So yeah, the council and several other counties that agreed to participate in the state of Montana's opioid lawsuit did sign an original MOU last year. And then the Attorney General wrote a letter dated April 19th to the commissioners and had amended the MOU that was previously executed and signed by the various counties. And as Commissioner Fisher indicated, there are several concerns with the amended MOU, at least by several counties that provided a letter to you indicating that they believe the amended MOU takes away some local control, and they have some concern that the new MOU has a board solely appointed by the AG to decide on how the settlement funds will be dispersed. And they think that the board determines the investment strategy, and that means that there'll be less money flowing to local governments. And so they were trying to encourage counties not to sign the amended MOU and to stick with the original MOU, which they believe is more fair and gives more local control on how these settlement funds will be distributed to each of the counties. So that's the basis for the motion to rescind.
Okay. Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. So, Commissioner Fisher, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, and thank you, County Attorney Joyce. And my original thoughts with this was, it goes back a long time, and the thing is I don't think we're going to get his fair shake by having a board in Helena distribute the funds to counties, whereas I think if we let our county attorney handle this a little better and don't have a board in there, whatever they agree upon, I think Butte-Silver will be better off. So with that being said, I would like to make a motion to rescind the vote taken on May 4th on Communication 2022-201.
We have a motion and a second to rescind the motion made to approve this from Communication 2022-261. Understand that, again, we need to have a 2/3 vote for this to pass. Okay? Could commissioners, I'm sorry.
Anything on the
Commissioner
question?
Frederickson, anything on the question? Commissioner
Thank you,
Frederickson.
Chief Executive. I would just like to ask our county attorney her thoughts on it, I guess, on the MOU, and I admit I haven't read either MOU, so.
Commissioner Frederickson, County Attorney Joyce.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Frederickson, I do believe that there are some valid points made in the letter that was provided to the commissioners and to county attorneys and city attorneys in the state. That's probably worth having a discussion and exploring whether or not those issues are of enough significance that we shouldn't, we should stick with the original MOU. And I guess I would also like to have a discussion with at least a couple of the county attorneys that signed this letter to figure out what happens, like if there are not enough people that are, if enough people already signed the second MOU, you know, maybe there's nothing more that can be done. I just don't know. I'd like to have a conversation with them to say, if you don't sign the second MOU, what does that mean? You know, what's the end game here, I guess, with the state of Montana.
Okay.
Follow-up, Commissioner Frederickson.
Yes, thank you for that. That's really helpful for me. My next question would be, so if we do rescind this and then we go back and it kind of sounds like you don't really know if there's, I guess, there's no way for us to be left out of the settlement, I guess, right? Either way, we're either going to get money in some way or we're going to get it from this board.
Commissioner Frederickson, County Attorney Joyce.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Frederickson, yes, and that's the question, I guess, whether some counties would be subject to, if they don't send the second MOU, are they subject to the first MOU?
Right.
And how that all works together, that's what I'd kind of like to get clarification on. But yes, there has been a settlement and there will be a distribution in some way that we will participate in.
Okay.
Thank you, County Attorney
Appreciate
Joyce.
it.
Any other questions? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. As a follow-up, if we happen to get the 2/3 vote and get this rescinded, the plan is to hold it in abeyance and then let the county attorney do her work and then come back and we'll have a little better plan, you know, what's going on then. So it's not something we're going to make a decision on right away, but I just think it's prudent that we take a little better look at this, because when this originated years ago, we had 3 attorneys here that wanted us to go with them instead of the state, and the council at that time decided to go with the state, and it was our decision, and that's how democracy works. And at that time, I was on the opposite side. This time, I'm different. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Any other comments or questions by commissioners? Okay, could commissioners please vote? And the vote again is for rescission. And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. So Commissioner Fisher, would you like to follow up with the motion here?
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. At this time, I would like to make a motion that we hold Communication 2022-261 in abeyance.
262.
262.
Is it 262?
What can I say? Oh, no, it's
61.
261. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My
So-
apologies.
So that the county attorney has a chance to evaluate our circumstances.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have a? Okay. We have a motion and a second, and Commissioner, or County Attorney Joyce.
So I think the communication that you want to hold in abeyance may be the one that's on the agenda tonight, but also 2022-201, which is the communication that actually approved you signing the amended MOU.
Okay.
So I think you have to include 201 to get it back on the agenda.
So would you like to amend your motion?
Got that, Jim?
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. I would like to amend my motion to add communication 2022-201. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to hold in abeyance communication number 2022-261 along with 2022-201. Is there anything else on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to communication number 2022-264, Dylan Pipinich, Butte-Silver Planning Director, requesting Council of Commissioners approve budget authority for Public Works in the amount of $220,000 for the engineering and construction for the western wall of 135 East Park Street. Director Pipinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. So, Commissioners, the reason I'm in front of you tonight is to talk about an abatement plan for 135 East Park. So, this has been ongoing for a few months here, and everybody knows the background, but you know, when Butte-Silver inherited 135 East Park, and they had an abatement plan for demolition and how everything went on, the issues with the 123, 125 East Park came to light, and the abatement plan for both buildings was in the agreement that is no longer on the table. So, you know, when we brought that agreement forth, that was the preferred route, you know, from us, and it was definitely the most cost-effective, as you'll start to see on the request here, but is no longer on the table. So the 135 East Park no longer has a path forward. So that's what we need to abate. The rescue mission buildings were posted as dangerous on April 28th, so we are now 20 days into the 60-day time frame period. It is 1/3 over. You'll notice on the communication that I sent in that the fire department has also signed that letter. They were gracious enough, and they're concerned about this building, that they offered some of their equipment up, and I'd like to show you guys some pictures from that building so that you can, you know, we can look at how kind of dire that this 135 East Park is. So when we did the initial investigation of 135 before we took ownership of it in 2019, there was a drone to analyze the damage to the building. Kathy, can I pause this somehow? Not right here, but okay. Nope, you're okay. So these pictures are in 2019. You can see about 20% of the roof is collapsed. That's about the same on the second floor there, and the back portion is still remaining. There's the lone occupant. And these are the pictures that were taken last weekend by the fire department and their equipment. As you can see, there's a lot more than 20% of that roof has collapsed. We're about 80% now. So I'm going to pause it on this one. The reason that I put this one at the end, oh, can you go back to that one, Kathy? Sorry. The nice thing about a drone is that it automatically levels itself. I don't know if any of you know how to fly a drone or have done that. But if you look at this last picture, it actually demonstrates a big reason of why 123, 125 was posted as dangerous. You're okay. One more. There you go. Anyway, all three buildings are considerably leaning to the east. 123 and 125 is leaning on 135. And as you've all seen, 135 has greatly deteriorated since it was posted as dangerous. Matter of fact, my personal opinion is that it mirrors, you know, the Lynch building that collapsed and started on fire twice. The fire department was gracious enough to lend us their equipment to look at this. And then also they have some the same concerns that I do. This building is a real public safety hazard. It's a real issue now. It has to be abated immediately. It's going to come down. And it's a miracle that it hasn't already. So what's in front of you tonight is the only other option that we have. The only way to tear down 135 is to build a wall inside the rescue mission building and stabilize that eastern wall of the rescue mission building, the western wall of 125, so that 135 can be torn down. As you can see, basically 135 is torn down. The only thing that's standing is 3 walls. The original cost estimates in those engineering reports were $50,000 for engineering, $150,000 to build a wall. I put 10% on it. You'll notice in that letter that I don't know that that's enough. It's a good place to start. Also, because of the leaning and the lack of what's called a shear wall, just so everybody knows, this does not abate the issue with the rescue mission buildings. We had a building permit come into my office today for a very similar scope of work, although it used a little bit more expensive materials, and the cost estimate for that was $400,000. That's so everybody's aware. But since we don't have an agreement, Butte-Silver bows, only skin in this game is 135 and how we abate this very serious public health and safety issue. So that's why I'm asking for that. And I would like to answer any questions. I did want to mention before, Director Burns may also have something to add to this. Because the wall has to be built inside 125 to do this, at least we'll find out more after an full engineering assessment, but it looks like that's going to be the case because everything's leaning to the east. We've also obviously been in contact with the rescue mission and they're aware of our plans, and Ms. Burns can allude to that a little bit more in a second, but I would like to welcome any questions from the councils regarding the communication.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Dylan, thank you. So where does the $220,000 number come from?
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner O'Neill, that was the preliminary estimate from Staley Engineering of $150,000 for the construction of the wall. We will need additional engineering to make sure that it stands, because we have to look at the foundation of that building. That's an estimate of $50,000. And then I tacked on 10% because that was over a year ago.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Follow-up, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Chief. Will we get 3 bids? Are we just going to stay with this engineering company, or?
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner O'Neill, yeah, we'll follow the procurement process as we need to. I don't know if Staley's even interested in it.
Follow-up, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you. So if it's leaning to the east, Mr. McGrath's building on the corner, how is that not considered a dangerous building also?
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner O'Neill, At this time, there's a fair amount of debris on the top of that building, but for demolition, Public Works believes that they can, after the wall is shored, that they can push 135 to the west, and McGrath's isn't a shared wall.
Follow-up, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Chief Executive. So before, I guess all the engineering and stuff would be done before Public Works goes to tear the building down, correct?
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner O'Neill, absolutely. Any abatement plan we will require be stamped by a professional engineer for either 135 or 123, 125. We need to know before work moves forward that it's going to work.
Follow-up, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you. Last question, maybe. So the 220, are we wasting our time, like giving you the authority for 220 when we have no idea what the amount is? I mean, because we're going to come for 220 today, and then it could be 400 or whatever. I mean, why 220? Like, shouldn't we? Let's get to the dance and get the bid, and then if it's $1 million, and then we'll talk about it then. Is that fair to say, or just help me with that?
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner O'Neill, this will get us at least to be able to figure out what we're going to need to do. It'll at least cover the engineering and some construction. I'd really like to get this moving. You saw the pictures. This can't stay there anymore. You know, our fire department, you know, especially with signing that letter, they're the ones that go into these buildings when something happens, and from their ordinance, they're the ones that are in charge of care of these buildings. And this is a Butte-Silver owned building that has significantly degraded in the last 3 years since it fell in our lap, and we need to move as fast as we can. I'm surprised it lasted this winter.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Thank you, Dylan. You've been through the ringer for a few months here. Do we have a cost estimate for Butte-Silver to demo all 3 buildings?
Commissioner
There's
Fisher. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Neary's not here, so, I mean.
Commissioner Fisher, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Fisher. Yeah, that was discussed when we were negotiating the agreement with the rescue mission. You know, when we did that, we were trying to make everything pencil as best we could for the taxpayer. And if you notice that this is my communication, but I'm asking to give the money to Public Works, I'm going to bow out of that one. But yeah, Mr. Public Works Director Neary, his estimate at that time, you know, when we were negotiating the agreement with the rescue mission, because Public Works can demo buildings a lot cheaper than a private contractor, he was looking at maybe $160,000, which $25,000 was paid by Silverboat Properties for accepting 120 or 135. So we're looking at $135,000, $140,000.
Thank you. Follow-up, Commissioner Fisher, and then we'll go to Commissioner Sorge, and then to Commissioner Callahan, and then Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Dylan, thank you. Chief Osborne's in the audience. I wouldn't mind hearing what he has to say. We haven't heard from him in months.
Commissioner Fisher, it might be better to have our fire marshal come up, since that would be under his jurisdiction, really, and he signed on to that.
Thank you, Chief Executive.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. Reason I signed on for the letter, I don't think anybody can disagree. 135 is a dangerous building. And so my job is to make sure our community's safe and our firefighters are safe. So the reason I signed on for the letter, I want to keep our public safe and I want to keep our firefighters safe. If you look in our municipal code, under dangerous buildings, it calls out different areas where we can deem buildings dangerous and we need to abate them. Also, under our municipal code, we adopted the fire code, which is IFC 2012. In IFC 2012, it also talks about unsafe buildings and how the fire code official is required to order correction or abatement of hazardous conditions. And so that's why I signed on for that letter.
Thank you, Fire Marshal Lee. Okay, follow-up, Commissioner Fisher, and then Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Chief Executive, for the correction. I didn't see him hiding in the corner back there. Thank you for being here. What is your opinion on the other two buildings, if you have one?
Commissioner Fisher, Fire Marshal Lee.
Yep. Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Fisher. They were also deemed dangerous buildings as well, but I know that that has gone through this committee and it hasn't been passed that you want to tear them down right now. But we own 135, so that is our problem, so we need to take care of it. Just as if somebody else owns a building and I have to deem that dangerous, I don't like to do it. I don't get a pick what buildings are dangerous. Just like when I was a firefighter, I don't get a pick who gets in accidents. But that's our building and we need to take care of it. So that's why I signed on for it. Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Thank you for the report. You know, I understand everybody's passion. I understand we've been through the ringer, but I'm extremely frustrated with this whole thing. You know, I am hearing from people, and they're saying, what in the hell are we doing up here? What are we thinking? You know, I'm hearing people from that, a lot of people. You know, at $220,000 to build a wall reminds me of a bridge going nowhere but to a bottom of a building that has no future. You know, so that's, I just can't consciously do this. You know, we heard last week from a park plan. That's a positive. You know, we want to build parks. We got a master uptown plan. That's going to cost money. That's a positive. We're looking at some buildings. There's no roof on one. We got one, they're leaning down. I understand wanting to save them. I get it. But where are our priorities? My priority isn't trying to save a building. My priority is going to be in parks, and it's going to be in the master plan. Like I said, I'm extremely frustrated.
Commissioner Sorge. Commissioner Callahan.
Thanks, Chief Executive Gallagher. I'd like not to comment to that, but I guess I have to. We haven't approved the $225,000, so it hasn't cost us nothing yet. Before it costs us something, we have to approve that. So, but my next comment would be to you, Dylan. So you went up there with a drone, and that's how you assessed the whole building leaning?
Commissioner Callahan. Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Callahan, we're focused on 135 now. 123 and 125 is not on the table. I'm worried about our building and how we abate that. That's been over 3 years. I think you can understand that that is a very dangerous building. The second floor is just as gone as the first floor. Yeah, I can see that the 123 and 125 are leaning. It was also in the engineering report that there's no shear walls, and that's why it's leaning on the other wall. He did a preliminary assessment of what it would take to build the wall on 135 when we weren't even looking at 123 and 125, and because the building is leaning on it, we have to brace it from the inside, and that's why the wall costs so much. I trust the engineer that did it. I can see that it's leaning, and 135 is a disaster, and it needs to be fixed right now.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Follow-up, Commissioner Callahan.
We totally agree that 135 needs to be fixed and we need to deal with it. But under today's circumstances, 123 and 125 have a purchaser that would be willing to abate those properties. And we've also had, in fact, a gentleman was here 5 weeks ago that said he would go in and dismantle that piece by piece, and you shouldn't even have to harm that east wall. So there is other options. I mean, first of all, the engineer report that we're making our decisions on also said this is not an engineer's report.
Thanks. Commissioner Shaw.
Did Dylan want to respond to that before I ask my question?
Well, I don't know if
Okay.
that, was
All
there
right.
a question there? I think it was more just of a statement, so I didn't hear a question in
Very
that.
good.
Okay, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would like to call on Jeannie Moylan, who has entered into negotiations for buying 123 and 125. The Rescue Mission Board had approved that, and I'd like to ask her if she could come up, and then I will ask Dylan what the fate is. I just want to know what the fate is of 123, 125, if we decide to do this, when we decide to do it, I'll say. I just need to know what the fate is, because if you have to go into the other side of their building, and here they are in the middle of negotiations to buy it, the Rescue Mission almost unanimously approved it. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Jeannie if she could come to the microphone. Thank you.
Ms. Moylan. There's the button there. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, hi. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Well, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Commissioner
I'm
Shaw?
not- Thank you. Jeannie, if you could just explain what has happened, the exciting news, I think, that you were going to be purchasing.
Yeah, I mean,
the
it,
building.
it was totally exciting to get a phone call that they nearly unanimously voted to sell the property to me. So I've been doing my due diligence, getting contractors ready, talking to insurance companies, going to the bank, talking to county commissioners, and trying to talk to heads of departments. And I thank you guys all for that. And I think there was a ton of community support. I've been in the building 3 times because the rescue mission let me in there because I'm interested in buying it. The second time I was in there with 3 people who, one was a licensed contractor, one is a builder who was a licensed contractor who is more into just being like a builder, and then also someone who's in the building industry. And these are, the head contractor just called me this morning, which is what I was so excited to tell you guys, is that he said he was excited to work on these buildings because they are solid to him. So I just think, you know, my handle on Instagram is the visual counselor. I'm a counselor, but I also love to take pictures, and I can't help but wonder, like I always notice there's distortion if you have a person very close to the edge of a picture, and that I would rather trust my contractors than a drone picture. Like, let's get in there, let's put a level on it. I don't know. I mean, I want to work with the engineering report. I want to be transparent. Of course, I'm the one taking on all the liability, coming up with all the money and doing all the work. But I want to do it to help this community who's trying to save all these buildings that there's a ton of interest in. So I think they're beautiful, and I agree that 135 is dangerous. Definitely needs to be taken down, but I guess I'm wondering about taking it down gently. And I have 3 different people who said they could do that and have the equipment to come in there with where they can gently lift up a huge beam and get it out, and that it might cost less. So I have a contractor who's going to enter my 2 buildings that I'm interested in on Friday again, if we can work together. I do have an interest, of course, in what happens with that wall.
Thank you, Ms. Moylan. Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Director Pipich did state that Karen Birds might have a little bit of input, so I'm just wondering if I could call on Karen to come up here.
Thank you. Director Burns.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Thank you, Commissioner Thatcher. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I think that the council is being slightly over enthusiastic about the position of the rescue mission in their negotiations with Ms. Moylan. I did get a clarification text from Bill McGlattery with the rescue mission during this meeting. He is watching these proceedings right now, and he wanted me to clarify that the mission board is negotiating an agreement. It has not been agreed to. No agreement has been signed. They have agreed to negotiate with Ms. Moylan. They have not agreed to sell her the building, as she has stated. It is in negotiation. I understand everybody is excited to hear that there is a potential buyer. That's great, but it has not been agreed to by the rescue mission. And that is a direct text.
Thank you, Director Burns. And then Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Just regarding what we're looking at right now is the wall and focused on the yellow building. And no disrespect to anyone, but until it just kind of piggybacking off of that, until the deed's recorded into somebody else's name other than the rescue mission, honestly, I'm not trying to be rude or negative, but it's not even a conversation, in my opinion, to future plans with that. The focus is the yellow building and what we're going to do, and that's just period.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. Commissioner Rudin, I think, and then Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Here we go again, okay? In your statement and all that, we're back to engineers and all that, and we've been over this and all, and you said the main guy, the statey guy that did all this work and engineering on these buildings, basically somewhat doesn't want to have no part of it right now, is that correct?
Commissioner Reardon, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Reardon, we haven't reached out to him again. I'm just assuming.
Oh,
We
you're
haven't-
just
we haven't
assuming?
talked to him
Oh,
yet.
okay.
I wanted to clarify that. We haven't reached out to him. We would do a bid and everything just as we need to do and follow all proper procedures to do that. And just to clarify, this is all about 120 or 135. It doesn't matter if 123, 125 is owned by the Rescue Mission or Mrs. Moylan or anybody. That wall needs to be constructed before anything can happen with 123 and 125 other than demolition. I wanted to make that very clear. That's very obvious in the engineering report. It doesn't matter who owns it. It doesn't matter who's bought it or anything. It needs to be constructed. If 123 and 125 is not to be demolished, there must be a wall built and 135 needs to come down.
Director Pipinich, follow-up. Commissioner Reardon.
Thank you. I guess that, the struggle here again and all that stuff is basically with the demolition of 135, and I guess I'll have to revert back to some things that were going on before I was here with the transfer of the $25,000, blah, blah, blah. We're all familiar with that. I guess my major concern before I came is we're talking about 135 now. Where are the mothball records and how did this building turn into such a disaster? Was it this way during the mothball process, or what was that the reason that it was turned back over to the taxpayers to absorb the loss on 135?
Commissioner Reardon, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Reardon, the mothball ordinance is a fairly new ordinance. You won't see the benefits of that for a while. The deterioration on this building was long before the mothball ordinance. The reason that we own this is because if you follow the dangerous building ordinance to the end, if the owner doesn't abate, Butte-Silver abates, and then we charge the owner. If the owner has no money, Butte-Silver is out that money. So at the end, no matter what happens, if there's a dangerous building that the owner can't abate, it's going to end up in our lap. We're the only entity that can take it. We'd be the only one of the ones that could tear it down, or it's just going to fall down. So this ended up in our lap. The agreement between, with the county attorney and the folks that worked on that was prior to me. At least we got $25,000 out of it, because if we didn't, we'd be in this exact same position with $25,000 less.
Okay. Thank you, Director Pipinich. I think County Attorney Joyce would like to add a little bit to it, and then we'll move on there.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive and Commissioner Reardon. And just to clarify how we got to where we were with 135, I mean, we did try to work with Silverboat Properties for some time. They believed that they could fix that building for a period of time, and we, tried to work with them to see and give them some time to get contractors, and that was it probably beginning in 2019, and then, of course, they indicated that, when COVID began, they were having trouble getting contractors to even look at the building, and when they finally, provided or got some estimates that was way too much, they basically told us they weren't able to take on the repairs. We knew at the time they owned several other properties. They had other liens on the property. They could have just stopped paying the taxes on that building, and it would have ended up in Butte-Silver's ownership. Also, we knew if we took them to court, you can't get, if we got a judgment that we couldn't execute on, that wasn't worthwhile to us or to the, taxpayers. So that's why we negotiated the settlement agreement, to at least obtain some money toward the demolition cost when they finally reached the determination that they couldn't repair it. We agreed then to take the property so that we would at least have $25,000 plus the value of the land to go toward those demolition costs. And then, of course, once the demolition began, we ran into the problem of the common wall, which is how this entire process began.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. A follow-up for Commissioner Reardon.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to say two things in closing. Is number one, I think what we all learned out of this again, and I'm not going to use my famous words, is we have to come up with a better process in dealing with these buildings, because there's controversy no matter what we do. So everybody got to get better at what we do, including this body here, that when somebody or something like this comes up, we have bang, 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 bang. And you can't really sit here and tell me that since I've been on the council and all that, that some of the things haven't been done the way that they should have been. And I'm going to leave that there, not insulting anybody, okay? So I think everybody in this room was frustrated with it, and I think that's what we got to do to work together, is rather than slamming each other, is sit down as adults and work with this ordinance and the ordinances that are already out there to eliminate this in future. Because every time one comes up, it's a different deal. I know 135, you know, it does need some work. And I'm a senior member here and all that, but there used to be a guy that demoed half of the buildings for like the Montana Theater, and that was Jim Gilman Construction. And the way he tore down those buildings was with a clamshell. So you had support going all the way down to the bottom of the foundation. All the refuse was left off the top, and usually most of the time, the front and back walls could be saved. So, I mean, we have to come up, maybe get better on that, just instead of driving in there. But I'm not going to say no more. I mean, if we can't figure this out as adults, and every week we're here, then we are all really in trouble. Thank you.
Any other? Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Chief. Just a couple, one question. When we got 135 back, at the time when we voted to take it back and do the demo, there was an engineering report done that kind of gave us a warm and fuzzy feeling that we could tear that building down with not affecting the buildings on each side, correct?
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner O'Neill, there was an a report done by Dowell at that time. We couldn't enter the building, still can't, obviously. It was under the assumption that that wall wasn't common, but there was no way to tell. It was too dangerous to enter. So that's kind of the issue here, is every one of these is very complicated, and they're completely different from each other. You know what I mean? The ones that rise to this level, we're looking at probably 1 in 10. We've handled 10 dangerous buildings since the Blue Range that have had no issues. But these very complicated ones, you really don't know until you dive into them, and then you got to try to, you know, roll with the punches and try to do what's best for the community and what's best for the taxpayer and what's best for the building owner and what's best for everybody. And there's a lot of moving parts. It's very complicated, and what's here in front of you now is that it is my job to enforce the ordinance, and I don't care if it's against Butte-Silver or whoever. We have to follow our processes to the T every single time, and that's going to be, in this case now, an engineer that tells us how to build a wall and tear down the building.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Director Thatcher, and then Director Shaw. Commissioner Shaw. So many directors and.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Just some quick math. You probably can't see it. Okay, so we're looking at, Mark Neary's estimate was roughly $160,000 for the demo, correct? That's what you stated?
That is correct.
Okay, and we were gonna give $12,000 to the rescue mission to relocate.
That's correct.
And the demolition, or then we were gonna purchase the building for $38,572 according to MOU?
That was going to be from URA.
Right. Okay. And then the $12,000. So the total of that came to $210,572, less the $25,000 that we were given by Silverboat Properties. So we come out to $185,572. That's hoping my math's correct. But I just would like to point out, so this $220,000, it's probably on the low end of things, is quite a bit more than $185,572. Is that correct?
That's how the math works out.
Okay.
$220,000 is just for the wall. It's about $50,000 to tear down 135, and that is Butte-Silverboat's problem at this point. We saw 40 days left on the dangerous building status at the rescue mission building. Previous estimates in that engineering report were just a guess, were 200. Like I said, I've seen similar scope of work cost up to about $400 that comes through building permit process. But that wouldn't be our responsibility for money. It's my responsibility to make sure that it's abated.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Follow-up, Commissioner Thatcher.
Director Gleason, could you come up here for just 1 second?
Director Gleason.
Just so that everybody knows, where will this at least $220,000 come out of to pay for the show wall?
Commissioner Thatcher, Director Gleason.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Thatcher, Commissioners, it's general fund tax supported, comes out of our general fund budget, so tax dollars use it. It's either tax dollars or it's an allocation or a cut in a project in another tax supported fund to cover the costs. Just so you know too, why I'm up here, I'm hearing this approves it, this does not approve the budget authority. What the recommendation would be if you were to concur with this is to set a public hearing to appropriate the general fund reserves to cover the cost right now, to begin the demo and begin the engineering costs. I did speak with Director Neri and Director Pipinich on this, and we determined the 220 just as a starting point for this fiscal year, because we're on June 30th is fast approaching. We figured that that would cover enough engineering costs in the beginning of the demo process, however, knowing that we'd probably be coming in the 23 budget for additional funding for demo.
Thank you, Director Gleason.
Thank you.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, and Commissioner Thatcher, I hope there's not going to be a test. I mean, I didn't take very good notes, so thanks. And with all due respect to my fellow Commissioner O'Neill, I know this request is asking about 135, but you can't really talk about 135 without 123, 125, because if it had a roof, I'd say it was attached by the hip, but there's no roof. But they are attached, and so I guess my question to you earlier, maybe I didn't phrase it properly, is what is the fate? I know you can't, there's no magic, bullet or ball that you can look at. I just wanted to know what is the potential effect, what is the fate of 123, 125 if this is approved and we go ahead with securing the wall but taking down, you're saying they're leaning. That concerns me, and I believe that is a valid question because they are attached. Thank you.
Commissioner Shaw, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Shaw, without a crystal ball, I don't know the fate, but here's the options. As I said, we have 40 days left in the abatement period for 123, 125. We really can't do anything until that wall is fixed. So if we go in and shore up that wall and fix it and tear down 135, the dangerous building status on 123, 125 does not remove. An engineer will have to tell you how to fix that building. Or would have to tell the property owner how to fix that building and what the cost would be. They'd have to procure a contractor. Again, the safety exclusion is already invoked. They could, at that time, the property owner would have to make a decision of whether it's better to repair or to demolish. There's the options moving forward. I see we construct a wall, 135 comes down. A lot of money is put into 123, 125. There'll be a big concrete wall on the east end, and the facade would be just the same, but it is possible to abate that building. It's probably very expensive. The other end is they demolish it and our brand new wall comes down with it, or we have a nice rock climbing wall uptown.
Thank you, Director Pipinich.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Sorry. I know this is being read to acted upon, but I would like to make a motion that we hold communication 2022-264 in abeyance until we find out what's going on with the sale and we get a little more information, because right now we're just kicking a bunch of stuff around that ain't getting us nowhere like we've done for the last months. So let's hold it again and play the game.
I'm sorry, I missed what we did. So we have a motion to hold in abeyance and a second. Anything on the question? We do still have some comments here to be made. I think it was Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. No, Commissioner Fisher pretty much summed it up what I was going to suggest, and I don't know, I guess I don't mean to talk about Commissioner Thatcher's math, but I believe the 160,000 might have been an estimate from 2019, so, oh, it wasn't, that was recent? Okay. Well, I stand corrected.
That was Director Anderson.
You get an A.
Commissioner Callahan, and then Commissioner Anderson, then Commissioner O'Neill.
Well, and there are some expenses that you haven't added in there yet.
I don't think your mic's on. I don't think your mic's on.
Sorry, thank you, Chief Executive. We're probably into it 30 to 50,000 already. You still haven't spoken, you know, you said it's very technical. You can go to the archives. Ms. Japp could have found out that information for you in less than 15, 20 minutes probably on how the building was built. So before we ever got into those buildings. But then on top of this, where does it stop? The gas station next door to 123 is also attached. So once we start knocking it down, we affect that building. Do we buy that one next? Do we have to pay to repair that building? I mean, the expenses are just going to keep going and going. This lady has offered to solve this problem in her best way. If we could work with this lady, I believe she could give us a whole lot better option. Until we get the facts, whether it's going to be sold or not, we're pretty much in limbo anyway, right?
Commissioner Callahan, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Callahan, regardless of what happens at 123, 125, that wall needs to be built. You saw the condition of 135. Nothing can happen at 123, 125 without that wall being constructed. That is a fact. I don't care what anybody says, that is a fact. So if 123, 125 still stands, and it doesn't matter who owns it, whether it's the Rescue Mission or Mrs. Moylan, I wish them all the best. It's their money, it's their building, it's whatever. What concerns me now that there's an agreement on the table is 135, and that wall needs to be built. And just to remind everybody, if we're holding it in abeyance, the Rescue Mission building has 40 days left in their determination, and I don't know that we're going to have any more answers until an engineer makes a more clear decision on what that wall is going to take. Just so everybody's aware.
Follow up, Commissioner
Just to follow
Callahan,
up.
and then we'll go to Commissioner Anderson.
Mrs. Mullen said she had 3 contractors go in with her, and their comment was that they feel if that was deconstructed piece by piece, that there's a good possibility that wall would be fine. So there are other options. I mean, it's not a fact that the wall has to be replaced.
It is.
Okay. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. I'm trying to get some zen going here a little bit. But I have a question. I don't want to sound too outrageous with it. So I've been kind of holding back on it a little bit. You keep on talking about this clock and this countdown that we have 40 days left. I was so in the ease of time, I just have a few questions. How long did it take for you to get the engineer here to look at this project when you first decided we needed an engineer? How long did, when you first made that phone call and decided that, how long did that process take before you had that report?
Commissioner Anderson, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson, it took a long time. And so the 40 days is to commence work on an abatement. You know, hiring an engineer and figuring out what's going on is commencing work. We've already commenced work on 135. It's basically, from statute, has been an ongoing work in progress this entire time. But I think the first engineering report was completed in May of 2020, so it was almost a year. The other one was in November of 2021. So, and there were some COVID delays in there too, but it takes a long time to figure out how to do this and how to fix this stuff. And you saw the difference in 135 this entire time and what a year does.
Follow up. No, I agree, it takes a long time. That's why I was wondering about how long, you said a long time for you to get that engineer report. So I'm going to take, for example, and just extrapolate that it was probably over 40 days, quite possibly, correct?
Commissioner Anderson, Director Pipinich.
A few more follow-ups.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson. Yes, and you know, we would say if you're procuring an engineer that you're starting work, but there's an extension time up to 120 days, but it's not much time. You're right.
No, well, that's my concern here is if Ms. Moylan does buy this building, and she has an engineer coming to look at it. She has builders and contractors looking at it. From things that you've said tonight and things that I've heard said in the past, it's kind of almost my contention that she's, you know, that 40 days from now, or 41 days from now, if you wanted to, you basically could go in there with a wrecking ball and take that building down and be perfectly justified in doing so. Am I correct in assuming that?
Commissioner Anderson, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson, you know, if there's no progress forward and she doesn't meet the intent of the ordinance, we would start the enforcement part. We would deliver it to the county attorney's office. And part of the reason why it took us so long to get 135 is that's a process. I mean, starting enforcement through county attorneys and going to court and stuff like that takes a long time. You know, I'm not gonna personally go tear it down on day 41, but we would follow the ordinance and the enforcement section for abatement.
Okay. So we have
Nothing
Commissioner Fortune next, then we'll go to Commissioner O'Neill and Commissioner Sorge. Okay, Commissioner O'Neill and then Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Again, we're focused on the building at hand, and until, you know, there's other ownership. I mean, we could. One thing I want to state is when we chose to tear down 135, we had money we were planning on spending, which is a lot. Who knows what? So take $100,000 out of that thing. We knew that was coming, right? But again, the rescue mission owns them buildings. I mean, if we have to, maybe we are going to build a wall and then they're going to tear them down. Who knows? But that's what we're talking about. Again, they don't own the buildings. Until they own the buildings, we can't even discuss what they're doing. Right now, the Butte Rescue Mission owns the buildings that we have no idea about. We own this one. This is our baby. It's going to cost a lot of money. Even when we took it back then, if anybody was going to kid themselves, it was only going to be $60,000 or $100,000. I mean, come on. I mean, it's going to cost us a lot of money. But maybe we either restore the building or we don't. That was a lot of intentions. If any historic people in the community think that this stuff's free, I mean, hey, it's got to come from somewhere. So I don't know. I'm done too.
Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. You know, I think, we've seen pictures of it. We've been talking about it. We've been hearing from the planning director. I think the planning director put us on notice. I don't think we're understanding the urgency of getting something done on this thing. You know, he's telling us it's still standing. I think we better listen. You know, number two, I mean, I'm no contract, but it seems like, okay, so we're going to put this out to bid and we're going to get it built in 3 days? Probably not. You know, it seems like every reputable contractor, you know, if you can get a bid on it. What if you don't get a bid on it? You know, we still got a liability that we have to deal with. You know, so I think there's an urgency we also have to deal with.
Thank you. Commissioner Reardon.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I would like to call for a vote on the motion on the floor. Thank you.
There's a call for the vote. There's a call for a vote and a second. So the vote is to hold in abeyance. Am I correct? Okay, going back to the original motion, okay? So could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote. 10 yea, 2 nay, motion passes. Okay, moving on. Moving on to Section 4, Ordinances and Resolutions inter judiciary. We have one resolution number 2022-35. Moving on from there, Section 5, Ordinances and Resolutions for final reading. We have a number of resolutions in here, starting with number 1, resolution number 2022-30. Clerk, could you please read the caption?
A resolution amending the budget during the fiscal year after conducting a public hearing and a regularly scheduled meeting of the Council of Commissioners in accordance with Section 7-6-4006 MCA, appropriating unanticipated revenue from United States Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance, for the purpose of amending the budget to accept the grant award to improve the operation of the Butte-Silver Veteran Treatment Court and the Butte-Silver DUI Court, and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to place resolution number 2022-30 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote. Did you want to change that?
Yeah, I want to change that.
So we do have one correction on there with Commissioner Sorich, who wanted to vote yea.
I can't go back, but I can record it.
That's awesome.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2022-31. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution approving comprehensive plan amendment number 22000001 to approve changes to the 2020 Butte-Silver comprehensive plan, incorporating by reference the Uptown Master Plan into the appendices of the Butte-Silver comprehensive plan and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I believe that there was a friendly amendment on that.
No, that
Or
was
that the
down
next
on,
one?
That was the
on number
next one.
4.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, just checking. Okay, at this time, I move to place Council Resolution 2022-31 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2022-32. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution approving comprehensive plan amendment number 22-000002 to approve changes to the Butte-Silver County Comprehensive Plan land use map of the 2020 Butte-Silver Comprehensive Plan, incorporating by reference the changes to the map and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to place Resolution 2022-32 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote?
Oops. Try it again.
Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to number 4, resolution number 2022-33. It does have a friendly amendment to Plan Amendment 22-00003 on there. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution approving comprehensive plan amendment number 22-000003 to approve changes to Butte-Silver County Comprehensive Plan land use map of the 2020 Butte-Silver Comprehensive Plan, incorporating by reference the changes to the map and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Resolution 2022-33 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2022-34. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution supporting a Butte National Historic Park designation.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to place Resolution 2022-34 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change the vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to Council Bill number 2022-02, ordinance number 2022-02. Clerk, please read the caption.
An ordinance amending Section 1 of Butte-Silver Ordinance Number 266 and Section 15.20.010 of Butte-Silver Municipal Code, BSBMC, regarding the violation and penalty section of Title 15 and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Council Bill number 2022-02, ordinance number 2022-02 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change the vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to number 7, Council Bill number 2022-03, ordinance number 2022-03. Clerk, please read the caption.
An ordinance amending Section 17.060.030 of Butte-Silver Municipal Code, BSBMC, which section adopted the zoning map of Butte-Silver, State of Montana, providing for a change to the official zoning district map by rezoning approximately 0.687 acres from R3 multifamily residential to C-3 central commercial, commonly located at the western half of Block 50 between West Mercury Street and West Silver Street, just east of South Idaho Street, in Section 13, Township 03 North, Range 08 West of City and County of Butte-Silver, State of Montana, providing for the repeal of all parts of ordinances in conflict herewith and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Council Bill number 2022-03, ordinance number 2022-03 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to Council Bill number 2022-04, ordinance number 2022-04. Clerk, please read the caption.
An ordinance amending Section 17.060.030 of Butte-Silver Municipal Code, BSBMC, which section adopted the zoning map of Butte-Silver, State of Montana, providing for a change to the official zoning district map by rezoning approximately 350 acres from not zoned to RM-1 rural industrial, commonly located immediately southwest of the Montana Connections Business Development Park in Section 36, Township 03 North, Range 09 West of the City and County of Butte-Silver, State of Montana, providing for the repeal of all parts of ordinances in conflict herewith and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Council Bill number 2022-04, ordinance 2022-404 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to Section 6, ordinance and resolutions for emergency suspension of the rules for final passage. We have one tonight, resolution number 2022-36. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move for the suspension of the rules for the purpose of passing Council Resolution 2022-36 by waiving subsection 7 of Rule 36 of the Rules and Order of Business of the Council of Commissioners, thereby having it considered for advanced passage without reference to the Judiciary Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the emergency suspension of the rules. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
Moving back to resolution number 2022-36. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution authorizing the submission of an application for BioSqueeze, Inc. with the Department of Commerce of the State of Montana for Big Sky Economic Development Trust Fund Program under the terms of the Community Development Act of 1974, 42 U.S.C. 5301, as amended.
Commissioner Shaw.
I move to place Resolution 2022-36 on final passage and passed on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, placed on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yeas, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to calendar and other meeting and events, please note all the difference of the calendars items we have. And then now I'll open up to any public comment on any item not on the agenda tonight. If anyone would like to come up and speak. Mr. Bandorab, welcome.
Auditor Bandorab, 2601 Grand Avenue. It's going to take a little short time. Again, our nation was founded by harmonious communities, by people willing to work together to seek common solutions to common concerns for the common good. Tonight you heard from the juvenile officer that we have a common concern of increased violence in our community. On March 22nd, 2022, this council approved on a vote of 11-0 with one absent, Communication 2022-81. As seen in the recent news headlines, the disrespect, the hatred, the violence, the incivility, the polarization, the prejudice, and the selfishness in our world, in our nation, in our state, and in our community is still out there. What is not out there is a national, holistic, comprehensive program to encourage and foster the creation of more harmonious communities. Communities with love of country, an all-inclusive attitude of greater mutual respect, a willingness to coexist, and a willingness to selflessly contribute one's own diverse skills and abilities to the greater good. What is not out there is a letter to our Montana congressional delegation requesting them to request the Director of AmeriCorps to consider establishing such a program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Seeing no other public comment, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signal by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Have a good night.